Alright guys, another day, another strength. Got another video for you today. This one is about maingaining, right? So the claim is that bulking and cutting are unnecessary provided that your body fat is under control. So you basically stay at the same weight, you follow your natural hunger, and then you gain muscle while burning fat, staying at the same weight, right? So for example, let's say you're 170 at 20% body fat, and you're just gonna stay at 170, you're gonna get stronger, and then eventually you're gonna creep down to like 15% body fat at 170, so on and so forth, right? And then as you get leaner, you're gonna get hungrier to the point where you'll like creep up a little bit, but not much, and you just kind of stay within that range without intentionally bulking or cutting, right? So the fact versus fiction on this is a little wishy-washy. It's a little bit goal dependent, right? It's gonna depend on what you're trying to do, gonna depend on how advanced you are. But I will say that my personal opinion is that I think people have it backwards with this generally. So most of the recommendation I see on maingaining is for novices, and I think that it's actually backwards. I think if you're a novice, you should be bulking or cutting, and if you're more advanced, then you should be maingaining. So let's get into that a little bit, right? Novices, on one hand, they don't really know anything about anything, right? So you have to kind of experiment and see what's gonna happen, right? So if you don't know how your body works, what it responds to, how you respond to gaining weight or losing weight, you've never done that, then you should probably do it, I think, at least, right? Experiment with that a little bit, learn about yourself, right? Because if you don't know what's gonna work, and then you're gonna go into basically hard mode with maingaining, where you're not gonna be able to gain muscle quickly or lose fat quickly, then that's gonna just basically kill your motivation. You're not gonna be able to do anything productive staying at that body weight, right? So when you're a novice is when you're most sensitive to muscle growth, right? You're the most fertile that you're ever gonna be to growing muscle. So you can amplify that with a calorie surplus, for example, right? Provided that you're not already obese. So if you do that, you're gonna amplify your growth, produce excellent results, it's very motivating. You're gonna learn a lot in the process. You're gonna learn, like where you hit diminishing returns with weight gain as well, where you just start to kind of get fatter. You don't necessarily get stronger or more muscular. If you do this properly though, you're not gonna be fat for longer than like a year or so, right? Probably less than that if you're doing it right. But yeah, getting fatter and getting fat are not the same thing, right? So you're gonna get fatter if you bulk, but you're not necessarily gonna get fat. And if you do get fat, it's not gonna be very long, right? It's very easy to lose fat, especially if you have a bunch of muscle and you've been eating more than you intend to. The thing I always tell people is like, let's say you're 5'10" and you weigh 160. I'll ask them like, what's the most you've ever weighed? And they're like 170. And I'm like, all right, so try to get to 200. Like I bet you can't even do it, right? So in trying to get to 200, they'll probably get to like 185 and they'll be like, I can't eat anymore. And they're like not gonna gain any meaningful amount of fat and they're gonna get much stronger, much more muscular in the process. That's generally what happens. On the other hand, right, if you're a novice and you're already super chunky, right, very obese, then you should be cutting anyways, right? So you shouldn't be maingaining your 40% body fat, right? You should be trying to lean out while you're training, and then you're gonna see a very profound effect as far as body composition change because you're gonna lose fat rapidly. Then you're gonna be building muscle in the process as well. And then once you're done with that, then you can kind of shift gears and work into a more, bulking phase. But yeah, for the novice, the gaining weight is likely not gonna have any long-term negative health effects, provided that you're living a healthy lifestyle otherwise. So you're, getting your diet from whole foods, you're not dirty bulking, not eating pizza and burgers during the bulk. You're staying active outside of training as you're bulking, you're sleeping, you're checking your blood work, right? Staying active as far as like getting enough steps and maybe like doing some cardio every now and then, or, just not like sitting all the time aside from being in the gym. But yeah, fat novices, cut to get your body fat under control. But maingaining is useful in a few situations. Now I'll go through them, right? And big hint here, it's actually in the name, right? Maingaining based off of maintaining. So the core premise here is that don't confuse maintaining with getting the best of both worlds. I feel like that's where the issue lies. People will try to maintain or maingain or whatever, right? And they think they're like, oh, well, why would I bulk when I'm gonna gain muscle and fat, or cut if I'm gonna lose muscle and fat, when I could just maintain and then I'm gonna gain muscle and lose fat, right? And that's not what you're getting. You're actually getting the worst of both worlds, right? Because it's gonna happen super, super slowly. You're not really gonna lose fat in any appreciable rate, and you're not gonna gain muscle at any appreciable rate. So you're just kind of maintaining, right? Which is kind of the point. So don't get that confused. But yeah, there are two situations where this is kind of like out of your control, where maintaining is a good idea. And I would even apply this to novices, right? So you can disregard what I said before if this applies to you. So two situations. The first one is life is just like crazy right now. You're in a very busy season of life. and like you truly are doing all you can to keep everything under control, but you just like, you can't quite get everything into place. And that's not the same as like just putting training on the back burner and not making an effort, right? So if that's the case, then you need to get your stuff together, like make an effort, actually try. But if you are, let's say you're like in a PhD program, you just had a baby, or you're moving across the country, or like all, you know, multiple of those things compounded together. You might have like, you know, might be mourning the death of a loved one. You might have like some injury that you're working through. Like all these situations, you know, this applies to that. And in that case, it's good to maintain, right? Because you're not going to be able to be consistent with your bulking and take good data. If you start missing sessions and you're still like eating a lot, then you start just like getting fat, right? So it's really crucial that you're getting stronger as you're bulking up. Otherwise, you're going to be gaining more fat and not really putting on muscle, right? The second scenario in which maingaining is all right for novices is if you are someone with like an eating disorder, or you like just have a tough time when you go off the rails if you start introducing extra calories, right? And you just like, you are at a point where you're happy and you don't want to jeopardize that necessarily, right? So that in that scenario, you know, I'm not going to tell you to try to bulk up if you have an issue with, you know, like something psychological, right? But yeah, then there are two scenarios in which it's okay to maingain. This is as an advanced lifter now, right? And number one is you're happy with your body composition and your strength levels, and you don't have strong aspirations to change things, right? So you can be satisfied with your current physique and strength and still want more, in which case you should bulk or cut, because that is always going to be a faster path from point A to point B, right? I'll give you some examples. So if your goal is to squat 405 at no more than 20% body fat, and you're currently 20% body fat, but your squat 365, then the fastest path there is not to maingain to 405. You will get there if you maingain, right, to 405, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to be faster to cut down to like 15% and then gain back to 20%, because then, like I said, that food is just going to like skyrocket your gains and fuel you until you get up to 405. Another example is if your goal is to get to 15% body fat and you're at 25% body fat, and you don't really care about your lifts necessarily, right? Even if you do, fastest path there is just cutting down to 15%, right? And if you're concerned with your lifts, you can cut a little bit, either just cut like very slowly, that's going to help, or you can even cut down beyond 15% and give yourself some room to bulk back to 15% as an example, right? Or you could even like cut down to 15, bulk to 20, and then cut to 15. You'll probably be stronger at 15 than you were at 25, for example, right? But yeah, so if you are truly happy with your body composition and strength and you don't have strong aspirations to change things, you're like, you know, like you're at a 365 squat, you're 20% body fat, and you're like, I'll get to 405 when I get there, great, like that's totally fine. In that case, it makes sense to maingain, and you can just like chill there, right? And then the second scenario, which is actually a continuation of the novice scenario I was talking about before, is if you're coming off a bulk or a cut and you're looking to kind of like reset things, you know, get used to your new body weight, reestablish your eating habits and your hunger levels at that body weight, even like resensitize your body to calories if you're coming off a cut, for example, or if you've been bulking a lot, right? And just kind of like, you know, let everything stabilize for a bit, get used to that. And usually that's not going to be a very long-term thing. It might be like a couple months, maybe like 3 months at most, right? But I recommend that. That's a good idea if you have just come off a long, like a drastic change in body fat percentage, for example. But yeah, those are really the scenarios in which maingaining makes sense. So just those two, I would say, for, you know, if it's within your control. But to summarize, novices should bulk or cut, right? It's always the fastest path to your goal, and you want to maximize those newbie gains, which calorie surplus is going to allow you to do. And if you are obese, then you should be cutting anyways. And then, you know, you can train during that period. Don't hold off on training to lose weight. I don't recommend that. Like, just start right now, because you are going to make the weight loss a lot easier by having something to actually fuel, giving your calories a purpose, among other things. And then once those diminishing returns kick in, see if you fall into one of the two other categories, right? So like, let's say you do your like novice bulk, and then you decide like, all right, am I happy with my body composition and strength levels at this point? And I don't really want to change things at any appreciable or at any like quick rate, then that's great. Then you can just stay there, maingain. And then if you want to, also, if you're coming off that bulk, you want to lose some weight, but, you know, I recommend staying at that heavy weight just for like, you know, a couple months, 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. Kind of like let everything stabilize, then you can start that cut. But yeah, that's really it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you thought it was informative, and I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, goodbye.